Okay, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back today. We have an amazing show for you. And I'm with my professor, Professor Lucas Rubbo. Professor.
Hello, Peter. How are you doing, man? It's been a pleasure to be back here. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, and we'll look to be more regular. You look alert today, though. What is going on? You feel is it the rest from
Yeah.
not having done these?
Same, it's the same old recipe. Submission coffee, man. From the morning to the night, ready for everything.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, we've still dodged the bullet. We have the, ADCC, all the governing bodies have not classified it as a performance enhancing drug. So you can still get it at the jujitsumindset.com website. Encourage you to subscribe to it so every month you get a bag. Professor, when we have talked to all of our amazing jiu-jitsu community and we talk about like the jiu-jitsu mindset, there have been times where we have seen that jiu-jitsu mindset, that principle of being comfortable when you're uncomfortable lives outside the art. And when we
Yes.
see tremendous examples of it. And, just recently I was just really, the divine intervened and put me in front of a gentleman who I was just so taken with. I think he's doing great work in the world and has a lot of experiences that are not jujitsu experiences, but have a lot of commonality, I think, with the type of discipline and the type of, getting over being uncomfortable. So, Mr.
Mhm.
John Graham, thank you so much with us. I'm so happy that you're
Thank
here.
you. Absolute honor.
So before we started the show, we were laughing with each other and like talking about all the, some of the stories we had to tell. And John, you've lived a bunch of lifetimes in one, is what it feels like when I look at some of the things
Yeah.
you've done. You're an interesting person. So we're trying to narrow portions of your story down, just so we have a way not to have you on for 12 hours. But as a jujitsu podcast, the physicality of our is often like a metaphor for other things. So when I think about your physical life, you have participated at high levels in a variety of physical activities. I think of you as a rugby athlete. I think of you as a bodybuilder competitor, and I think of you as a boxer. And those are different things where the competition, if you're on a team, you're in competition with another team. As a bodybuilder, you're in competition really with an ideal, like an idea, which is an interesting competitive dynamic. And then boxing has a lot in common with jujitsu. It's two guys facing each other, and it's a combat sport, which is different than many other people's kind of experiences. So may I ask you kind of take us through some of your physical background and maybe some of the lessons that came out of those different ways of being an athlete in the world?
Yeah. I mean, that when I was young, it started in rugby. I'm from Australia, but I've been overseas for most of my life. So part of being Australian, you have to, and really sort of standing on your identity as an Australian, but being a kid that's grown up overseas, I thought like this was really going to ground me as a true Australian. I got to play rugby. I got to hang out with the Aussie boys. I got to, I got to drink the 4X beer and get on the field. That would really make me Australian. But I just think because I was young, and I was quite skinny growing up, I didn't have like a lot of confidence growing up because I was very thin, white boy, skinny hair, freckles, red hair. I was like, nah, there's not much going for me here. I gotta get on the field, get hunky, and then I'll get the girls. I guess that's how everything started out.
That line is the beginning of many adventures.
That's right. That's right. That's the motivation. But I remember like playing rugby a lot, doing well, getting a lot of like encouragement from the coach, going on to the first tour. Of course, going on tour as a rugby team, you're part of the team. There's sort of a series of events. You're all sort of pulling heads together. You go out, you sort of have a little bit of a rowdy time and everything. But on that first tour, I got my shoulder blown out of joint, and then there was like a micro tear in the on the shoulder bone, and it was out for quite a long period of time. So obviously the ligaments they got greatly weakened, which meant that rehabbing it and coming back took a long time.
Yeah.
But still, I kind of identified myself as an Aussie rugger, and I was like, I got to push through this. I got to get through it. So I would bandage it up. And when it was okay, I'd go back out on the field. I did 2 games. I remember now it was 2 games. I was okay. The third game, the other shoulder popped out. And the
Oh
reason
wow.
the other shoulder popped out is because when you're on the field, I was very protective of this one.
Uh-huh.
I was always making sure that I wasn't putting it into a dangerous position. But then obviously I didn't care about the other one, and I would go in with the other one, because rugby is one where it's not like NFL where you're going head to head, but
Uh-huh.
you're attempting to trip the other person. But then in the ruck, there's a lot of people, a lot of bodies that jump on. And if there's a ligament that's out, like you got your foot out or anything, and as people jump on the ball, because we would play union, we didn't play league. League is faster playing. The ball goes under and the keeps, but with union, there's the ruck, and then you brace, everyone gets on side, and then the ball goes out again. So like was, it was a lot more, it's a lot more intense, especially when you're doing a scrum, when I was left lock. So I'm holding the front end, and then there's the hooker, right? Who's in the
Right.
center. And it's a test, it's a contest, it's like a contest of power between the forwards. The forwards and the forwards win the game, but the backs score the tries, right? They actually are the ones that actually go over the try line. That's sort of the what we say in rugby is like, we're actually the one winning the game, but the backs are the ones that actually put the ball down.
Right.
It's like there's a lot of scrumming, but in league there's not that many. There's no scrum, right? But I remember just like something happened. I just wasn't watching my other. I was always, you're looking forward, and of course you're looking around, but it was just a split second where I was watching that side, and then someone came in and I fell, and then the other shoulder popped out.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, that's probably good enough for me. It's best that I don't push this. But actually rehabbing the shoulder was when I would get into boxing, because boxing, when you're throwing punches, you're sort of like, if your tendon's like an elastic band, you're attempting to strengthen it, right? It's just a way that in a rehab protocol to just help support the shoulders getting rehab. So I got into just the practice of boxing, but then I got heavy into CrossFit when it was becoming famous, the competitive side, where the CrossFit, as it grew, as a platform, it grew by the competition. The workouts, doing the workouts and the training and all that became popular because of the competition, because that was the interest. You pick a side, pick your favorite person, and you root for them, and there's a scoreboard. It's a format that visually is someone who's like, what's going on? Oh, I can get involved in this. I like the guy with the cool hair. I like the guy with the earring, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And Australia, you have the legend Sia Tony, right? Winning everything. That lady, she just is unbelievable.
Yeah, and then you get the nation behind you, right? Let's root for our boy. So CrossFit, them think the science, the philosophy, the methodology, of what it was, could only succeed if they add the challenge, to promote it. That's promotion, the wheel that it drives on, right? But then competing, it's not about like doing heavy load, low reps. It's about doing heavy load for high reps, because that's where, in my opinion, that's kind of how CrossFit goes competitive, is when it's not like, oh, it's, powerlifting, right? It's like, let's go really heavy, but we got to just do one, right? You train up to like a very short interval of an extreme intensity, right? But with, and then with bodybuilding as an example, high volume, it's all just about how much, blood, how much water you can push into the muscle to push it out, while also getting lean and then displaying this on stage, right? Whereas cross, like high volume and high intensity combined, right? And then of course there's the gymnastics, there's the Olympic lifting, there's all these expressions, these modalities, right? But it just meant, in short, that my left knee got a lot of damage from squats and cleans and jerks and all of this. It would always it was wear and tear until finally it just had too much. And then it just, it stopped working. Like I couldn't sit in a seated position for over 10, 15 minutes without it really, really flaring up and getting extremely painful. Like I would stretch the leg out, and I would have like oils and creams that would heat up the joint to blood flow there to help the pain go away. But that was just something I dealt with, which pushed me out of CrossFit and then into boxing.
Okay.
because rehabbing my shoulder and then obviously following all these, getting into combat, getting into this idea, you know, for me, the truest expression of the human experience is a boxer. Like if you look at Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, that rags to riches story, the story of triumph, like a lot of times, like people have asked me, like people that are sort of consider themselves like psychoanalysts or if, you know, or that they're like, what's your, like visually the word, what's anger for you? What's success? And every visual that I have in my head of all of this is always to do with boxing.
That's interesting.
It's like, for me, the idea of depression defeat is a boxer, you know, with his you know, his head in his hands and he's crying. But what's triumph? It's a boxer, you know, when he has the belt wrapped around him. It's like that is like it's everything in my life is all. Whenever I'm by myself and I'm thinking, what do I do? I just start shadow boxing. I can't stop. Like it's just this. It's this sort of, you know, the hero's journey, right? That have in my own life, and then I see it in other boxers' life, and I get interested in their stories, and it's just I get obsessed with it. But
before you start, sorry to interrupt you, John. Before we start boxing as a rehab for a shoulder, was something that you always had on your mind that you know you would like to do at some point, or just a crazy coincidence that I'm gonna do this, it's gonna help me.
Yeah, because I remember because I've opened 6 successful gyms. But that's another story. But I had a gym. I had a gym which also was a fight gym as well. It had a fight aside to it where we offered combat classes. But I had I had a BJJ coach, who was mostly for kids. I had the boxing side. And then we had what was it? I think this is when UFC was trying to kick off a little bit, like it was trying to go mainstream. I remember my business partner invited Kung Lei to come, the guy he fought Rich Franklin in Macau, and he knocked him out. But he invited him to the gym, and we had like a seminar. We would do stuff like this all the time. We'd have like obviously there would be the BJJ side. We'd have like the wrestling side. But I was very young in business and building gyms at that time. So I didn't quite know what I was doing on the business side. So it was a lot of stuff into the gym. And sometimes things didn't work. And there'd be a class that was like a self-defense class. And then it would go. And like, it was very messy. It was very messy. But that got me interested in the boxing, in the combat. Because people would say like, this, you would get involved. Like I'd have the coach, he was like this train guy, Sergey or something. Yeah, Sergey. He would come in and I would get involved in the classes myself. So I think that's where the interest came from originally.
So in this progression, I mean, some things, one thing lead to another, probably out of interest, and then some out of necessity. Like I think had your shoulders been okay, you might have had a longer time, in rugby. And I will tell you, as a soccer player, I got recruited to be on the rugby team, and I was like unsure. So I said, but they're like, no, you're going to be great. You're going to be there. And then I went to one of the rugby guy, party of the rugby guys, and the rugby party was the most violent experience I had experienced in a long time. Those guys, the fights that broke out between the teammates, I was like, I'm a little guy. Like I'm not a big guy like you. I'm a little guy, and I got scared away, and I regret it, at the time. But I'm like, look at these people. There's no way I'm going to get out on the field with these guys. So it was in the city that I was at. The rugby guys were they're super big, strong, and tough, and very indifferent to pain. Whether they're So I'm sure as a young guy in a country where rugby is so important, that you would have stayed along. So through a variety of reasons, you go from one thing to the other. Professor and I have had our CrossFit journey in itself, so we appreciate your interest there. Um, could you talk maybe a little bit about either what stayed the same or what was different in your relationship to, like, what those physical experiences were giving to you as a person outside of those physical experiences? How was it shaping your character? if there's a spiritual component, like, um, this sounds like a pretty, interesting journey. And if you're injured, none of us like to be injured, right? And I know you have some unique ways that you dealt with that, and we'll talk about that a little later in the show. But I got to think that every step of the way, something was changing in you. And well, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my question.
Yeah, like I definitely was becoming more empowered, more bold, more
Okay.
confident. So that if you really want to go deep into the psychology of it, and I've done this many times with myself and with people that are far more intelligent with me, I love sort of psychoanalyzing myself. Why did I say that? Why did I make that decision? Where's this tracking back to? And I do this a lot. I just in the journey that I've been through, I've developed, a deeper understanding, not only of me, but also of the whole human experience. But
Sure.
it all goes back to that young boy that was skinny, that was confident, that had a teddy bear inside it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this is something I really like had a major awareness of this when I moved from boxing, when I was getting hit in the head so much that the tumor developed, and I just stopped doing that. So then I went to bodybuilding. But bodybuilding is where I really identified this, because all of the competitors that were around me, like before we go on stage or leading up to contests, I developed a strong confidence from boxing and from business at that point. So going into bodybuilding for me was just, I needed something to do. I needed like something outside of the business. It's something about me where I can't just do one thing,
Right.
because then your confidence, your whole sense of purpose is in one bucket. I
Right.
needed to have another bucket that if this went down, I go over to this bucket, this is winning, and then it balances,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? Yeah, I always needed to have this thing. If business wasn't working, I got to win in something. Okay, I'll go to the gym. But then it's like the gym, like I'm good at curls. It's like I have to do something. I got to do quite well, give myself a pat on the back, and then go back to the business and I push that up, right? But all the bodybuilders around me, all the massive guys, massive. Like you look at this dude and you're just like, can he fit through that door? Like he's sit on this chair. Like where do you buy your chairs? Like you don't know where
Right.
they
Right.
live. Like how do you live on this planet? Are
Yeah.
we on this planet? But these guys were so unconfident, so unconfident. I'll never
Interesting.
forget going for my first show, MPC, and I was doing the tanning thing, and I saw a guy that I know, a very famous bodybuilder, and I was like, hey, how's it going? High fives, high fives. And then I'm being all like, I'm like a rugger. I'm like, "Rah, rah, rah." And he's like, dude, is that guy bigger than me? Can you? And I was like, no. He was pushing, it was pointing to, was nowhere near as big as him. And I was like, you think he's bigger than you? He's nowhere near as big. Like, and then it kind of like it, but he would say things like that, and other bodybuilders would say things like that, where I was like, whoa, you guys are a bunch of teddy bears. You still
Right.
have that teddy bear from your past, like I do, right? And
Sure.
that you go through these pursuits, these conquests to try to give your teddy bear armor, right?
Right.
To protect teddy, right? Because the teddy bear is just the unconfident boy, like when he was young, who didn't get picked in the team.
Right.
So you want to be always picked in the team because that feeling affected you. So, that you want that, you keep chasing it. Right. And I think it's what I've identified is that it is healthy. It is healthy to have these conquests, but it's healthy because it drives you, but
Right.
don't let that take you,
Yeah.
like it, don't, because it's all about being am I worthy? Am I worthy? And it is something that I realize, like, that as you go from one thing to the other and you're pushing, 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 you're only fighting against yourself because you're never good enough for yourself. Everyone else around you is like, you're doing great. You're doing wonderful,
Right.
John.
Right.
Keep going, keep going. But it's not enough. You don't care. And I'm like, why don't I care? It's like, oh, because I don't care. So it's a healthy thing. And every high performance athlete or high performance business person has this. But the wise ones are the ones that know about it. They keep it in check and they make sure that they balance and they give themselves, that gratification. But
Yeah.
I
I
think,
mean,
well,
yeah. I
that's
mean, it
it.
makes sense. The
That's it.
hero's journey, right? I mean, that's I think a very lovely idea. I'm a Joseph Campbell fan, if that's a familiar name to you. Like the notion of like, hey, we're on this road. It's all leading to the same place. Like we're all dying, so it's all like the journey is just the journey, and every accomplishment has its short-lived appreciation and all the rest of it. So to be able to balance it. And I'm somebody who overschedules myself. I have an interest in accomplishing many different things in variety areas of my life. So I have an ambition to be well-rounded and developed and all of that. And the boxing, when you're in that ring by yourself, probably gave you a different type of confidence than like a bodybuilder where the victory is given to him by the opinion of other people. Those are
Yes.
different experiences. Professor, I mean, I'm just curious, as you listen to that, I mean, I just think there are things that might line up with some of your perspectives about,
Uh-huh.
coming up in instead of rugby, jiu-jitsu probably had a similar
Sure.
kind of preeminence in your childhood. I mean, could you talk a little bit about that?
No, absolutely. I was listening to John and I was making some things up in my mind. I agree 100% what you were talking about, John. And a lot that you were saying to me was looking like what Arnold Schwarzenegger say on Bumping Iron, right? Like he was playing mind games against his competitors, especially like Lumaflex, right? For those that ever watch. But it's a lot about that, right? So his confidence over the other competitors. And I was curious, Shu, on your perspective, competing in rugby, CrossFit world, boxing, and on bodybuilder, if you see this type of a reality happening a little bit more in the bodybuilder compared to other sports, and I'm asking this because to Peter's point, like every time they're going to compete in jiu-jitsu, right? You know the top guys on every division, and you wanna fight with them, right? As a fighter, you want to fight against the best, and that's how you're gonna kind of like measure yourself a little bit. But it's not about only the winning, but that challenge that we face each other. But on the moment that you start question over like, oh, is that guy? Yes, he's so much bigger than me, so much like you create all those doubts on your head. I think it's really hard for you to be able to perform on your full potential if you're doubting yourself from the beginning. Right? I remember Michael Bisping talking about that before he fights Victor Belfort on the UFC many years ago. Is like, dude, this guy's huge. And he was kind of like afraid to fight him. And on that point was when he realized that was time for him to retire. Like if he's questioning himself too much
Yeah.
right before a fight, he shouldn't be there anymore. And that's on his speech was kind of like the point of that I'm not on the game anymore mentally, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like that as well? I'm not sure if I'm being clear what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
adding another question, do you think this type of reality happens more in the bodybuilding world in CrossFit or in the rugby or in the boxing when we're going to face a big challenge?
Yeah. Yeah. Like bodybuilding, for me, to be honest, I did very well. First ever body MPC show, I got second place. And I was like, what the, why am I getting this? I'm new to this work. But I wasn't invested in it. I
That's
really
interesting.
didn't care. I didn't care. And the other competitors, I'd be like, yo, I think you're going to win. I'd have fun with it. Like I just did not care as much. I really didn't. But boxing, I remember one time going to do a fight and there was some stairs. There was like these stairs that were leading up to this where I needed to go in to go meet my coach and everything. And I remember having a talk with someone at the bottom of the stairs, and I looked up, and the guy that I was fighting was coming out of the room, and he was on top of the stairs. I'll never forget this. And I looked up, and I was like, because he's at the top of the
Yeah, right.
and he walked down and he was like, hey, and we sort of were like cordial to each other, like he was British. So I was like, hi, and he left. And I remember thinking like, fuck that all the way up until the fight. I never forgot that. I was like, man, and I worked really, really hard. I overshot myself just because of that one experience. Right.
But that pushed you, right?
Yeah.
That drove you that's the thing.
And it pushed me a bit too much because I remember I lost that fight just because I got so just
overtrained.
just that one encounter because it mentally just whacked me out. So the mental side is so important, especially like if you think about Tyson Fury right now, who's fighting for the undisputed, he's fighting Alexander Usyk, and the stories that have led them up to this point. I've followed these stories for years, like how they, Alexander Usyk with his amateur career, with now his, his cruiserweight division coming in, and how he beat Joshua twice, and then he beat Daniel Dubois, Tyson, there's all these stories. The stakes are so high for Tyson. He's got high stakes.
All the pressure.
So when people say like, oh, Tyson's scared, he's not scared. He's a cruiserweight. He's much bigger than him. He's experienced. Like if Tyson fights as Tyson, he will win. But the problem is the stakes. It's not you thinking, what if I lose? It's not thinking, oh, what if he's bigger or he's stronger or he's faster. What if he wins and I lose all of that?
Yeah. Sure.
My whole legacy. That's kind of how with an athlete is, the more that they compete, it's not the fear of the other person or what they're capable of. It's if they lose. It's simply the thought, if I lose, all of that is gone. I tank. All the belts I've got, all the recognition I've got, all the press I've done, all the credibility I've earned, all the armor that I put on myself.
Yeah. Nicely said.
Because as the stakes build up, it changes. And that's when you lose it, because they can see if you're about to crack, and they can come in just with a little bit of more gusto, not even more skill, just more gusto, and push you out.
Do you think, John, this is part of the Logan Paul and Jake Paul, part of their success on their boxing matches, like having low expectations and kind of, I'm interested to hear that from a box guy, like I never had the chance to talk with someone about that. What's your thoughts on this? Like, do you like this type of promotion? I'm sorry if I'm going completely out of track, Peter.
No, I like it. That's on my mind too. Yeah.
I talk a lot about this. So the Paul brothers and the whole influencer boxing thing, it is healthy for the sport overall, because just to, maybe 5 years ago, boxing was it wasn't doing well. There were the Crawfords, then there was Floyd Mayweather, but he retired. It was doing okay, but the heavyweight division was terrible. And it wasn't, that's when UFC was coming up. So the boxing as a sport really was having a rough time. And to have the influencer boxing come in, it grows the sport as a whole, the whole industry. I mean, even the boxing promotion that I built, all the events I did, I leveraged on that influencer boxing concept a lot. I used that and used it in my marketing, my promotion, my communications. You raise sponsorship, you get media involved, because you present it as this is a trend. Now boxing is a healthy thing to do. It's not just, for the select few of the professional, something everyone can get involved in. So I use that a lot. But speaking specifically about the Paul brothers, for example, with Jake Paul. So Jake Paul, what he wants to do is to be a pro boxer. So he has a lot of money. He can invest in a good team. So the team isn't just the coach or the nutritionist. It's also the mind coach. He has a guy who manifests and meditates. It's like a mental doctor he has with him. He has a whole management team that plan his career into the sense, not this is his next fight, but what's he doing 5 years from now? How are we building him up? And this is what Canelo went through. All the top boxers of the world now, they had a manager that got them ring time. You get the journeyman in there to lose, to build their experience. He the exact same thing, except he has a very a big light on him, right? He has a large telescope, a large, a lot of, so this all starts being talked about, like, oh, you're picking this guy, he's too easy for you. You're picking this guy, you're planning your fights, and that's all part of the boxing system that's been done for years. He's just doing it with everybody watching. He also has money involved. But also him and his character as a person, with all the tattoos, the chains, the beard, and the funky hair. I'm always like, you got to pick one of them. You can be the tattoo guy. That's cool. Tattoo chains, and then the crazy yellow outfits. Like it's like, it's too Gen Z. Like it's too, which is his audience. So I'm like, so as a boxing purist, I appreciate the business side and how he's doing it. I think that's good. But as a profile, if I was managing him, I would tighten it a bit. I would make him more
likable.
Joshua. Like, I'm like, as you grow older, you can't be a young, stupid kid that's buying cars everywhere. You got to think of yourself as a mentor. If I was a father and I had a kid, I wanted to do boxing, I'd be like, don't watch Jake Paul, watch Anthony Joshua. So you want to create your profile, that next generation, you build on this and you're influence, right? I would just change that about him. But for Logan Paul's career, he just picked fights, just made money, and then went into WWE. He had a sort of a different, his sort of track in boxing was more just like, because he lost to KSI, he just wanted money, and then eventually go into the wrestling, that stuff. But Jake Paul, I understand it's two different journeys, but yeah, Jake Paul's doing it probably the better way than Logan, right? But he's in WWE, so who gives a fuck?
So I mean, as it relates to Tyson, then is there a homicide in the future here? Is that going to just turn out awfully?
Tyson Fury,
No,
yeah.
no, I meant Mike Tyson. Yeah,
Mike Tyson. Oh, because that's something because when you see that fight being matched up, of course, like why? Then it's like, oh, of course I know why, because there's a lot of profile building that's going to be here. And if you're a manager and you have a fighter, if he loses, he needs to still win.
Right.
So he wins, but if he loses, he still wins. And I would do this when I would do my boxing matchups. So if I'm Jake Paul and I've got a track record, he has like openings in his year. He has those camps. He has like contracts on the line, but he wants to stay active. He wants to earn money. He needs to build his profile. He needs to get his numbers up. He has his companies that he wants to fund and everything. I'd say, let's do Mike Tyson because the story is good. If I lose, I give credit to the top G of boxing.
Right.
I still get value. Everyone goes like, good job. You gave it a try, but he's still the top G.
Right.
Like he's like, yeah, he's the top G. And you elevate his profile, which supports you, right? Oh, I did my best, but he's Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this story. But then also if you win, everyone's like, oh, and maybe you get a lot of haters, but everyone knows the haters are the best fans.
Yeah.
They're the ones who drive it.
Yeah, the publicity gets driven the strongest by the negative stuff, sadly, and too many times.
What is going to be the outcome of this fight?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't think that Jake will lose because Jake wouldn't, he would pick the fight in that way. His management, they would have that conversation where like, if you lost, we still win. But also the team that he has with him, they're all boxing analysts. He doesn't just have that one guy that was his friend back in high school, worked the pads with him, but now he's his coach. No, he has like top coaches who say like, if you're going to fight Mike Tyson, because what you have to realize with the influencer boxing, especially with Jake Paul, with what he talks, he says, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out by the 6th round. I'm going to knock him out by the 3rd round. They always give something the media can take and talk about, right? Which creates the build up for the fight. But really, most of the time in his career, he unless he sees it, he just fights defense. He just dances around the ring. Let the clock go out, get the right shots, right? And then stay out. That's what I would do. Mike Tyson, I would just fight defense. I would fight the same way I fought the first fight of Tyron Woodley. He just fought outside. And outside. And he's old. He's going to tire him out, slow him down. Sure, do a few exchanges in the middle, get the crowd excited. Maybe you get one hit, but just stay away from it. Just stay away.
Yeah. Not a good idea to rope it dope. Though he's no Ali. You know, I mean, the George Foreman fight, the Rumble in the Jungle, was I think it's an underappreciated feat of athleticism to stay away from those bombs that Foreman threw and to make its way into that 7th round around there. This is a little dangerous, this kind of topic, because we're going to have you on for 10 hours and I want to kind of continue this arc. So let's talk a little bit like white collar fight night and sort of, obviously you've had a lot of success as an entrepreneur in a variety, and we skipped over your tumors. Well, that's an important part of sort of your healing journey. And maybe we'll come back to that in a bit, but just for the sake of time, like, could you talk a little bit about this white collar fight night structure you built? What was the motivation, and then what's kind of come out of that? Tell us a little bit about that, John.
So the story actually starts with Tyson Fury, the current lineal WBC heavyweight champion of the world. Current. So I was, I had my gyms, of course, and I developed a friendship with a guy who was he was working as a what would you call him? A headhunter, a fight recruiter. He's bringing fighters into organizations. He's
Okay.
looking for fighters and he's signing contracts to an organization, very small organization. I can't even remember the name, some real, a very, very low level organization. And he was very close friends with Peter Fury, who's the uncle, who's his uncle.
Okay.
And he talked a lot about Tyson Fury. And Tyson Fury at that time was going to fight against Vladimir. Vladimir had the heavyweight title. He was the heavyweight king for 11 years.
Okay.
And people, I mean, most people consider it the most boring era in heavyweight boxing, the Vladimir era.
Yeah.
Because he had this style that was so boring. Like it was no Mike Tyson style, which was exciting. Yeah, and knockouts. Like Vladimir had this very safe Ukraine style of reigning the heavyweight division. And Tyson Fury, through his journey in track, he finally was able to get a fight with him in Germany. And I got all the info from this guy who was very close friends and used to work with Peter Fury. And he was like, follow this guy. This is the guy to watch. This is the guy to watch. And watched the fight. He won, and all the belts transferred over to Tyson Fury. And then this same guy told me, you should do boxing. You should do boxing promotion. Make a boxing promotion. And we would talk for hours and hours about this. And I think over one night drinking, it was all, yeah, Tyson Fury, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm going to be a boxing promoter. I'm going to do it. And I said, yeah. And I think something clicked, and I was like, well, that's not yeah. But the idea was you get a boxing ring, you support a charity, charity supports getting tickets, you pay a venue, you have a certain bill on the venue, you try to cover it in tickets. And then probably the main way is with F&B, you get you get the dinner in there, you get the bar, and a lot of the money can be from drinks. But I literally said I would do it and went out the next day to go look for venues, finding venues and locking a contract with the venues and everything. All I did, I learned as I went along. I didn't plan anything. I literally just as I went along. And the event was extremely difficult to go to do. It was it was a very tough event. It was the toughest event I ever put on. But when it was finished, I actually made a little bit of money at the bar. Like I made money on the bar. And how I made money at the bar was when everybody left to go to the after party, I stayed at the bar and I counted every drink, every receipt I counted. So like a little bit of money, but I was like, whoa, this is a proof of concept. Right. And then the whole community asked to do it again. So we raised, I think we raised like it was 105,000 for charity. So we raised like enough for charity where they were like, please, let's do this again. And all that was for charity was I just get auction items. I just get like special memorabilia. And I was like, who wants to buy it? Who wants to buy it? That's all it was. So people would come and they want to support charity. They came with their wallets and I would just auction items. It was very, very easy format. So we went quickly to the next one, which again was a success. We broke even. Then I think we did like 2 more back to back. And that Christmas, that year was the biggest we ever did. Okay. It was like complete sellout. We were trying to like get fine tables and add new people. People were just saying, I'll buy a ticket full price. And I just want to stand in the back. It was a huge event. It was massive. Like the whole community freaked out about it. Like they loved it. But then going into the next year, we did a lot of events and some were break even. Then some start to lose. You start to get reluctant with running it too much.
Sure.
So I reformat the event a bit and go in for sponsorship. That was the idea. Like
okay.
Sponsorship. And actually the new format going sponsorship meant that the ticket price was cheaper. Anybody who comes in as a vendor, they can sell, and they pay us a tiny fee, like just to provide this offering, like a drink or a sandwich or a burger or whatever. Meant that our main focus was on the sponsorships and using media or using the local community to get what the sponsor needed. And that's actually
who's the athletes? Where are you finding the boxers to be on the bills for these?
Everyone everyone had to have a working profile. Like they could not be an aspiring boxer or pro boxer. They had to have a working profile. Like they had to we had to use the word white collar, like they had to be white collar, even if they weren't quite,
Right.
like I'm what is it like? Oh, I drive a lorry, and I was like, transportation director.
Yeah, right. Okay. So so white collar,
Yeah, you have to color, make it colorful a bit. But I remember we had a government, a guy that was in like the local government. This is about also the matchmaking this guy was 51 or 52, older gentleman, very, very experienced in boxing, extreme, no fear whatsoever. But he would wanted to fight against guys that were younger than him, because that's the story. Because I would pick guys that had less experience, half his age,
Right.
larger on the profile. He's this old dude with a bald head, but he was so good at boxing.
Yeah.
How those boys that
Sure.
like, Jesus, like he cracked the bag, and they're like 70 years old.
Yeah.
He was one. Why is, but I was like, oh, I can't find someone your age. You'll destroy them. So I have to go with someone younger who has less experience, maybe a bit bigger, so a bit slower. But that was that's the art of matchmaking, is you create the story. He wins or loses, he still wins. If he loses,
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
Guy's been in the gym all day. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
but always it was it had to be working professionals.
Right.
And we try to match industries. So this guy was like a chef at this famous restaurant. And then you find a chef at that restaurant, and you have like the battle of the culinary.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, this guy has like some, tech startup, and he's, and this guy's, and it's the battle of the future of technology, like you create these stories. That was how it went. But it's 37 events. It's 37 events to date. Each event is an average of, let's say 12 fights, right? 12 fights average. Most of the the big events, especially towards the end of the year, were always 15 fights. I think one night, I think no, I think I remember in like the first year we went like 500,000 we raised for charity. I would say hundreds of companies got involved, because usually if someone who was a white collar, he said, I'm going to bring my staff. I'm going to buy tickets for all my office.
Yeah.
He then would put his logo on the promotion. So it took off. It really, really took off.
That's awesome.
It's fun. It was really fun.
So like, yeah, that's like, it's interesting to me in terms of like each step of the way, like one thing builds on the other. Like all of these experiences seem to, and one of the things that I think is wonderful about, the white collar fight night is that you're also trying to do some really good work in the world. So could you tell us just a little bit about,
The charity.
the charity that's supported with us?
Yeah, the charity, they do work in China. They're called Captivating International, and their very first event. This is a funny story. So the very first, this is really funny. This is funny because inside the charity, all like the founders, all the the volunteers, they all know this story, and they always joke to me about this, because every year I go and I give some like Tyson Fury memorabilia. Last year it was Zhang Jilei. I got him. He's ranked 6. So I got a bunch of, I always give some items. So the very first event, when they set it up, it's an auction item concept, right?
Okay.
And, I was like, what can I auction up? I was trying to think about what I could auction up. And my friend, who is my business partner at one of the gyms, he played a joke on me. It's very cheap. So we were going, he registered me, because I was like a fitness trainer at that time. He registered me as a date, like as the,
oh no. All right.
and that's so funny, because on the way to the taxi, when we're going to the venue, he told me, he said, oh, by the way, you have an item up there. It's you. And I was like, what? And when I get there, one of the ladies who was a volunteer, she got a dog collar, and
Now, it
was really funny. But I raised, I think it was like,
$12 million, $15
oh
million.
yeah, it's like 3,000 or something. It was so funny. But that was the first event, and then every year I would bring either sponsors or I'd give items or I would try to
uh-huh.
advertise with their event. But every year for the last it's 15 years now. Yeah, every year.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. I mean, and just real quick in terms of the charity's primary interest, in terms of, there I saw a lot about how it is affecting people's lives there. Could you just give just a quick note
Yeah,
on the?
so they support like they actually have a more support for ladies in rural areas of China
Yeah.
because when like China is a very successful country on the coast, the main cities, right? It's a very like it's
Mhm.
advancing fast. But in those rural areas, which are very heavily populated, the person that doesn't have the opportunity, usually the ladies, the females,
Yeah.
the girl,
Yeah.
usually they're married early and then they're just on the farm and they're working and that's it. And then it just in the
Right.
cycle. So part of the programs that they have is to get these ladies education, get these young girls education. They're all young girls. They're all young girls.
Yeah.
And get them education to give them some kind of toolkit and some kind of empowerment if they ever wanted to go to the city, right? They could have this opportunity.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I want to get, yeah, they do that. They also, you can get involved with them by like buying a pig for the family
Right.
or like, or being part of a school that's inside that rural area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just, but, but yeah, I like the school program. So, cause within them, you can invest in any other program. You can donate to any of the programs. So the education for the young girls is one, the school's one, and they even have one where you can buy a pig for a family and
Yeah.
they write out all that they can benefit from just having a pig. Just
Yeah.
having
Okay.
the
That's
pig raises, it does all this stuff for
Uh-huh.
their just by buying one pig.
right.
So a lot of times they have events, people will just say, "Oh, I'll buy," and you think, "Oh, what does the pig do? Like, do they just eat it? They just have like a pork barbecue?" But actually, no, they raise it. It like there's piglets.
Yeah. It
And
affects things over a long period of time.
yeah,
Mhm.
So, John, I mean, one of the things that I like about your story is that at each kind of increment along this journey, there's this thought of helping people as a part of your journey. That your hero's journey is about you, but you're not on an island, and you're not just
yeah,
competition with people is not the only thing that you're there for. You're there to help people, and so. Um, just as we kind of head into the conclusion of the podcast, I want to turn our attention to another way in which you're helping people. You know, I'm sure many of the athletes that came through, as Fight You promotion, all your years as an athlete, connections to all these gyms, people as they commit to being physically fit over time, that comes with its own consequence, right? Like the body doesn't stay the same, and you've had a lot of injuries yourself, and like how to address that. There's a lot of advice out there, a lot of different ways. Some things are useful and some things are not. Now, one of the things that you're interested in doing is helping alleviate pain in the world, like literal physical pain. And I would like for you to tell us a little bit about your business that focuses on that because it ties into this, big story. I think really perfectly. In some ways, it almost makes sense to me that part of your journey would include, okay, I would been in combat sports, I've been in competitive situations, I've been in the promotions of these things, but sometimes there are consequences to those that people get hurt, and they need ways to mend themselves and keep themselves optimally fit. So, may I ask you to talk a bit about that?
yeah. Like being that young athlete, like I talked about, very aggressive, always trying to outdo himself, always trying to prove himself he's worthy, right? You become more focused on like, yes, I will do it, rather than maybe I should step back, analyze, plan. You just
Mhm.
need the validation so much that you put yourself into situations where, and that's part of the journey of an athlete, right? Is they gotta outperform in order to get noticed and then progress. So but where I'm at right now, where I'm climbing very fast to 40, I want to have a family, being married right now, obviously kids are on the horizon and everything. my brain has switched more into a recovery and looking to extend how, my life, right? Because I want
Right.
to, enjoy a great time, not just with my kids, but with my grandkids. So when that changes, and I think it happens when you get, you meet that special person, you develop a relationship, and then you start looking to the future. And then
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I've been operating almost on a like live each day as if it's your last kind of this mentality, especially when it comes to physical sport and everything. You
Uh,
look more like, oh, you got to slow down, not going to lift heavy. What's the point? Who am I trying to impress here?
Right.
I need to impress my kids now. I gotta hang out for them. So I start lifting lighter weight. I start doing more. It's not as intense. I'm not going into the boxing ring, doing sparring with
Right.
another heavyweight. It's like, let's take the headgear off, no gum guard. Let's just do some body sparring. Like let's keep it simple. You switch to, because there's no validation anymore. There's only
mhm.
risk.
Right. Right.
And throughout, like, as I was doing all these sports and getting injured, especially with the tumor, and because getting impacts to the brain from boxing created a micro trauma in my head, which developed a tumor. During that whole process, and obviously, my wife was with me at the same time. I'm like, it's a bit of like a wake up call, right? Like, let's slow down. She's like,
Uh,
don't worry about doing this. Like, of course, she's like, she's saying those things where you're like, okay, I'm going to switch a little, switch my gears a bit, my mentality. But red light therapy helped me throughout my entire time, especially, when it started in the knee injury. And it was introduced to me by my wife,
Okay.
who is also, she's like, we're like yin and yang. She's very calm. She's very collected. And I'm more the emotional roller coaster. I'm more the one that like riles everybody up. I'm the promoter, right? I get somebody excited about a boxing fight and I tell it in a way where I'm like, if you're not there, you're going to kick yourself, right? Like that's what promoters do. They make small things, big things. That's what a
Right. Right.
promoter
Right.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
But she is more just like, say it how it is, right? She's very stable. Um, so red light therapy, but introducing red light therapy to me to help me with my knee. Of course, I followed it to the T, and I'm obviously now extremely grateful to her because now, it brought about the birth of Lumaflex,
Yeah.
which is the world's number one portable, flexible, durable, and this one fully waterproof red light therapy pack. So, and it is the Lumaflex story is my story. It's a story of like where I've come from as an aggressive, idiot. I was just getting injured more now to someone who takes a step back, likes to listen to wiser people, like
mhm.
to get people likes to get still taught, like really wise people are the people that still keep learning up until their deathbed. Right. And I want to be that focuses more on recovery, focuses more on living longer and
Mhm.
it back to my future, my kids, right? I want them to benefit from all of this, and I can't do it if I'm broken, right? Or if I'm,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And let's see. So I'm 53. So there's more than 10 years between you and I, John, and your professor's maybe a little closer to you. And so I may sit on the forefront of like, well, what are the consequences of not properly attending to you in terms of your physical
That's
body?
right.
And I think that one of so as red light therapy for you over time healed you in unexpected ways, as I understand it. Like one of the things that not everybody is this is not a modality everybody knows about, right? So it's the notion that this red light activates your cells in a way that allows them to express themselves in the most fullest way. So the body becomes returned in a sense to
That's right.
and the body's wisdom is the greatest wisdom as it relates to healing, strength, and all the rest of it. Um, and it seems like an incredible marriage of this is a natural experience. I mean, you and I have talked before about in different times in history, getting up at dawn, being exposed to light at certain times of the day and in the evening might have been part of the natural human experience. And
Yes.
that's no longer the case. And then you've taken this really meticulous mind of yours and applied a scientific approach to kind of bring this natural experience into a person's ability to control it and harness it. Um,
Yeah.
so, like, when you think of Lumaflex's ability to live within the context of many of the people listening are jujitsu people. Now, some of them are, you know, muscly tigers like Professor Lucas, and then some of them are like me, old dogs that really are, you know, doing their best to be as participate as fully as possible in the experience, recognizing that my brain and my body have different messages. My brain's saying, we're going to do this. And my body goes, well, we're going to do a version of that. And, it's be fine. Just relax. That dialogue's going on. But this experience of red light therapy feels to me like there's two like really important parts for our audience to be mindful of. And one is the notion of healing, like you have things that need to be healed. This can help. And then there's the notion of just being being able to express yourself fully. Like I have joints that do not work properly, and I'm curious, can I get them to work better than I do now? So maybe for someone who might be maybe they've heard of red light therapy, or maybe this will intrigue them to find out about it. Could you talk about like how Lumaflex might fit into both people's lives that are listening?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Peter is so good at packaging information. You know, like there's things that are in my head, but when it comes out, I'm like, I could have done that better. You know what I mean? But that it's such a benefit because really intelligence is expressed when you
Yeah,
share it. It's
yeah,
how it travels. If it makes it like what happened to the Egyptian intelligence? Well, obviously, something there was either a complete like rejection of it, like we can't tell the world, or it wasn't communicated correctly, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, that I really, really appreciate. But what I always try to say with red light therapy is I know we say red light therapy, but if we just talk about
yeah,
the other component to clean water, which we need daily, regular exercise or movement, which we need daily,
Yeah.
sleep, not the light sleep where but real
yeah, right.
deep
Yeah,
sleep
Uh,
every day. And we need healthy food, right? These we need every day. These are daily to sustain us. And I would say light is not just an addition to its components, but probably it was, if we look back in ancient times, it was probably the most vital, important piece
yes,
of,
right, right. Yeah,
daily basis. So I always tell people like it is therapy and it can help you. And that's how we promote it. That's how we market it. That's where we establish its value at a point. But really you have to look at red light therapy as something you should have every single day,
right.
as every single day, just to balance yourself, right? Balance your physical, emotional, and mental and spiritual,
Yeah,
overall well. Right? There's so much information out there pushing us to go back outside to get more connected with nature. There's so much literature and clinical studies now that basically when you read it all down, it just is like, oh, I need to go out, put my bare feet on the ground to
yeah,
ground
right,
my
right. Yeah,
right? I need to look at the sun. I need to get sunlight. I don't need to look at the sun. I just need to have sunlight hit my eyes, right?
right,
I need to go to the beach, right? I need to be in the sand, and all of this stuff is like, you can't just buy a pill and then take that pill daily. It's like these
right,
are, you really boil it down. It's just working with nature, and we're exposed to red and infrared light all the time. But
right,
just the optimal time to get it is at sunrise and sunset, where the light, we don't have the more dangerous rays of light, which over time can catabolize
uh-huh.
us. We're just getting red and infrared light. So I always tell people like, that I don't want to scare people off with pseudoscience, or you're a yogi, or you're
sure.
a hippie, by saying words like primal and back to nature and get connected. Some
Uh-huh.
people reject that, and you want to package it in a way that, like, just like Peter's doing so well, where you it makes sense. Like, why not try it? There's no disadvantages. There's only an upside. So, and that's kind of key for certain audiences. But that's how I always try to get it, is like, maybe if you're still not fulfilled in your life, there's still anxiety, there's depression, there's
Sure.
hesitation, maybe if there's anger, there's fighting, maybe you should introduce light, and it's not something that will go wrong. Like, it'll only work or not work.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I will say that, in terms of dealing with disease, dealing with illness, and building optimal health and keeping the body healthy, I find them, for my disposition, to be one and the same. In that, I mean, this notion of like, what should a doctor be? A doctor should be somebody who keeps you from getting sick. not brings you
Yeah.
back from being sick, like and these fundamental principles of, you know, the human organism lives in a environment in which it's mostly water. So, you got to have good water. And, when
Mhm.
you eat, like, of course you want to put the right and good food in there. And, we don't live in caves. We're out here in light we've evolved in the way in which light we know plays an important role in keeping us healthy.
Yeah.
Something John and I have talked about in the past, right, is this notion of your eyeballs. We talked about eyes hitting your sunlight. Your blood is running through your eyes all the time, and sunlight's a disinfectant. And so it is actually one of the ways in which the body cleans the blood is to not have sunglasses on over a certain period of time. This
Yeah.
is a long story with lots of things to talk about. And so I wanted to address it, and I'm going to go along with John's advice, and going to explore red light, as I have some issues that I feel like are intractable, and I'm going to follow his guidance on some of using Lumaflex to address what have been called some of the most intractable shoulders in the history of shoulder joints. And so we're going to see if I can get a little bit of movement there, because he'll get a Nobel Prize should he be able to help me. So so John, just in conclusion, and Professor, before I wrap it up, is there any other questions before I head to the end here?
Many questions, Peter. A lot of questions, but we don't have time for that. I think next time we need to have a podcast of John just talking about boxing. The other one just talking about CrossFit.
Yeah,
Just talking about Lumaflex. Just talking about rugby.
Yeah,
That
I
guy's so
agree.
wrong, man.
When I was starting, please go follow. We'll have John tell you his social media. When I looked at his stuff, I'm like, what's going on with this guy? He's in this country, he's in that country. I'm
He
like,
must
I
have a
stumbled.
twin.
I
He
st-
has a
yeah, I
twin
stumbled
of your
across James Bond, the James Bond of all kinds of things. So I think Professor Lucas is right. So John, just for now, why don't you tell the audience, just like, hey, if you want to go learn about you, because your stories are fascinating, tell them like your social media, and then there may be people who want to see Lumaflex and like what that looks like in practice. Maybe you could give them a way to find that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I mean, anyone, please, I love hearing questions, concerns, especially about red light. I have access to so many scientists and photobiomodulation doctors all over the world. I have a wealth of information, clinical, that I love to share out. But just John Graham Fitness on my Instagram is usually the best way, because I'm most active there, because a lot of athlete communication, influencer communication is done on Instagram. But then lumaflex.com, this site, feel free to check it out. Ask the hard questions. I personally am in charge of the messenger chat box on the site.
Okay.
I don't let anyone touch this. I don't let anyone touch. Like I will do it until I'm so busy. Like I would have to be so busy to give that up. That's my end customer. And that is like, I have veterans that, tell me about some of the conditions that they've had from being in the military. It's heartbreaking. Some of the stuff that they've done. And this is almost like, I would say a couple times a week, I have veterans message me, like, can it help me with this? I was shot in the shoulder. Like I have an injury on the side of my head, like from, something that fell on it. It's like the worst stories that you would hear. I have stories from, even from doctors. They'll message the chat thing and say, how can I incorporate this into my practice? This device and this device, what are the nanometers? How do I use this to its best advantage? That's usually the question I get asked the most is, how can I maximize the use of this device to help my pain? And for your shoulders, I think they call it the golden triangle.
Okay.
So it's not just this one specific area of the shoulder,
right?
Obviously the front and the back, but you have to do under.
Yeah.
And this is where the blocks will come in. So you have to look at the entire joint and get all the light. So that for your protocol, easily, if you could do it twice a day, 10-minute, twice a day, each rotation. So that would be 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, twice a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're all right. We're going to go 45 days of that, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
So the only thing I realize with all you, shredded guys, I'm going to have to, I'm not sending you any shirtless pictures of it on there unless I can lean out in the course that maybe that will happen. And then, motivate me to send you some
Let's
videos.
save that for the fundraising part.
Yeah.
Yes.
So John, listen, on behalf of, Professor and I, we're so grateful. Professor Lucas is right. We got a lot of things that, perhaps you'll come back and talk to us about. He and I, by the way, Professor Lucas has been a boxer, so he knows a thing or two about
Not a boxer.
boxing.
I did a box. It's
Ah,
different.
I got to hit the bag next to Tommy Hearns and Jerry Cooney back in the day. I like to say so. And the police athletic league. I don't know if that's familiar to it, but those were for us old people. Like that, those are who organized boxing of the youth. So if you know anything about the PAL leagues, like that was my early days exposure. That so. Thank you for spending time with us, John. We would love to come back. Look, please go check out his social media and lumaflex.com. And I think you're going to find some really interesting information at the very least.
Thank
So
you.
that's so awesome.
Thank you
All
guys.
right.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you.